Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. I want to tell you about a visit I had just last night with one of our top bass fishermen from our area. And I mean, he has won so many tournaments, but he's a North Country boy that embraces the North Country, and he's helping us with our kids tournament. Both of his kids have become great fishermen. And I went to see him because we wanted to talk about how we could make this kids tournament so special this year. But I saw him at the land that he has three of his own special private ponds there on this land. And in those ponds, there's all kinds of different fish. So we started talking about the fish. But it's more than just talking about them. We stood on the banks of the pond, and he threw out some pellets because the ponds are full of trout as well. And to watch these trout come up, these trout that were 12, 14 inches long, come up it's almost like they knew they were just waiting for this food, and they're all over the pond. But here's what fascinated me. As I watched the trout come up to the surface and grab these little pellets, all of a sudden, an invader came into the area, and a big bass moved in, saw these trout doing it, and believe it or not, these bass would inhale a whole 12 to 14-inch trout. And I was blown away. I said, I've never seen anything quite like this before. I didn't realize they would hit something like this. So we watched and we sort of embraced the whole physiology of what was in these ponds and how these ponds existed as a whole separate ecosystem. Jonathan told me, he said, summertime, people think that pond fishing is so easy for bass, but it isn't. It becomes very tough in the summer. And why? Why does it, I don't have the answer to that question, but when you think about it, it's not like out in the St. Lawrence River where you've got this massive system with currents and so forth. The pond is a much more isolated, smaller system that is so much more affected sometimes by changes in the environment. By the heat of the summer, changes where most of those fish are going to go and how they're going to gather around structure and how their eating habits may change tremendously in the summer. They may eat only every 3 days, but they're big fish. So it was fascinating to me. But then I said, well, what are the dangers here? How do we know that these fish are going to be here for years to come? How long do they live? And he says, well, one of the biggest dangers that I've had here in these waters are from otters and from osprey. So how do these things know that all of a sudden this water is full of fish? And we talked that maybe the otters from way over by the St. Lawrence smell in the air. They smell the fish. They can, we don't have abilities to do any of this like animals do. They have such a greater sense of smell and hearing and sight in many cases. So the otters invaded the area. Then he says the osprey would come in. He said these ponds are also full of miniature carp. Why are they miniature? He says, I think there's so many in there that they're stunted. But they seem to be the favorite food of these predators. Is it because they're easier to catch? Do they taste better? We don't really know. But it fascinated me to think. He says, by the way, these ospreys seem to be the dumbest birds. I'll go out there and I'll try. He tries to be like a scarecrow to keep them away, and they're not challenged. They're not afraid in any way. They just keep coming and doing their thing. And I spent 2 hours watching the pond, learning stories, and it was so fascinating to me. And here's the other thing. Here in the North Country, we've got so many areas like this with different environments and different things that other parts of the country really don't have the same. We really we have a jubilee of resources, and that may be the wrong word, but it's amazing what we have here. And in most cases, we just take it for granted. We don't know. I talked about being along the Oswegatchie River and seeing hordes of big gar come swimming up. I wasn't even aware that there were numbers of gar like this in our water. Just a short area from where I run every day. And I've always said, since I was very, very young, and I used to talk to people around the country about the North Country, and I'd say to them, whether they were in Missouri or in Oklahoma or in Arizona or out in Montana or Florida, in other words, it doesn't matter where I was or who I was talking to, my focus was, boy, I'll tell you what, the best I've ever seen is back home. And I used to say that a person could spend a lifetime, if they were an avid fisherman up here in our area, and never sample the same water twice. There's that many opportunities and wonders out there that really go unnoticed by most of us, including me. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.